Good evening. You're welcome to Centre Ground. I have gone live this evening. It's Saturday, 9:30 p.m. I'm here with Colm Granahan from the Anti-Corruption Task Force to give you an update on what has happened to the McGann family who were arrested yesterday morning. Colm, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Anna, and hello to all out there that's watching or listening.
Now, I'd like to begin by apologising for my failure throughout today to give an update. Colm and I went live yesterday afternoon, and then we did a live last night at around 11 o'clock. And I didn't give an update throughout today because the fact of the matter is that we didn't have any update. So this evening, I have managed to make contact with somebody who was with the McGanns last night when they left their home. So if I could just quickly run through what happened yesterday. And the details of all of this are on the live videos that myself and Colm did yesterday. And they're available on my Facebook page, and they're available on the Irish Inquiry Facebook page and YouTube channel. So suffice to say that Anthony McGann was arrested yesterday morning when he was driving into court with a retired Garda, Kevin Taylor. A retired Garda, Kevin Taylor, was driving the car, and Anthony was on his way to court to seek some documentation, an order for documentation. He was arrested and he was brought to Castlereagh Garda Station. Kevin returned to the McGann home to find that Geraldine and David weren't there, and later he found out that they had been arrested also in a separate arrest, and they were taken to Castlereagh Garda Station. Throughout yesterday, we didn't have any contact with the McGann family. We had actually no idea what was happening. We learned from an Irish Times report yesterday evening on the High Court action, or the High Court case that took place yesterday evening, that their phones were actually taken from them when they were arrested. We learned from mainstream media that they were taken to a High Court sitting, and that Judge Leonie Reynolds gave them until 10 o'clock last night to vacate their home, and she directed the Gardaí to take them back to Roscommon. And when we went live last night, we spoke with Donald Hanley, who spoke with the family sometime just before 10 o'clock. He was able to tell us last night that the family arrived back at their home at 9:30, and they had a half an hour to collect their belongings and to vacate the property. And that was the last update that we had at 12 o'clock when we finished the live. What I've learned today, well, this evening actually, from somebody who came to assist the family last night to help them to pack their belongings, that the Gardaí extended that time. They were given an extension until 10:30, until 11, until 12, and then finally at 12:30, the guards told them that they had a choice of either leaving there and then or being arrested and taken to jail. So they very hurriedly got into their car at 12:30, but before they left, David went out. Now, it's reported in the papers that he has 14 cats. We do know that he has a lot of cats. They're his pets. It was pouring out of the heavens at the time. You remember the terrible storm we had last night. So David went to the yard to say goodbye to the cats. He was crying. He was very, very traumatized. And by the time he got into the car, he was soaked to the skin. I learned also this evening that the McGanns, when they were taken to Castlereagh station, they were put into 3 separate holding cells until it was time for them to leave for Dublin. I believe that they were in Castlereagh Garda station for a number of hours, and they were taken to Dublin in a paddy wagon, that they were put into 3 separate compartments in the paddy wagon, and that they were unable to contact each other on that journey to Dublin. I'm also told that they were taken back to Roscommon in the paddy wagon, and the same thing, they were unable to make contact with each other on the journey of approximately 2 hours. I'm also told that at times yesterday they were in handcuffs. Now, I want to remind you that David McGann is in his 60s. He has a number of very serious ailments, and among them he is a chronic asthmatic. And we're hearing so much about COVID and cocooning and care of the elderly. You can see on the screen now David sitting at the fire. David has been sitting on that chair since the morning, or since the afternoon he returned after the eviction. He hasn't gone to bed, and he sleeps in that chair, and that's where he sits when he's not outside tending to his pets. He's very, very vulnerable. We're hearing so much about care of the elderly at this time of COVID. Taken to and put into a cell, loaded up into a paddy wagon, taken to Dublin, brought home in a paddy wagon, and given very little time to gather their belongings and to leave. I'm told that when they returned, that they were highly traumatized, very, very traumatized. They were not the people that left for Dublin, or that would have left their house that morning. They were very, very, very shaken, and David was very, very shaken. Naturally, a man of his years, to go through that ordeal, we can't even begin to imagine what he went through. Now, Donal last night spoke to us, and he said that because their phones were only returned to them on their return to Roscommon, they had no idea where they were going to stay, that they had made phone calls, and naturally people were reluctant to take them in because of the COVID restrictions. They didn't want to break the COVID rules because there are very, very stringent rules in place at the moment. And nobody wanted to put themselves into a position where they were going to break those COVID rules. And there are no hotels available at that hour of the night. So the friend who helped them has absolutely no idea where the McGanns are. They drove out in their car last night at 12:30 to an unknown destination. Nobody has been able to make contact with them today, and we have absolutely no idea where they are. So that is basically my update. So Colin, what's your update?
Well, mine is similar. The same thing. I tried phones and I didn't get talking to anyone. But my own phone and our ACT page has been inundated with offers to help, to turn up, to do from the 4 corners of the country, to do whatever they can. And it's the same kind of story from everyone, that if this goes, that it's the end of everything. And the messages are unreal of support, and that everyone says this avalanche that's coming down the road of evictions, and I know it, and I can see it in the streets around our own small little towns and local villages. Every place closed down. There's a lot of places that had mortgages on them, and a few years ago when we were trying to keep people in their homes when we started, they said that we were mad in the head. But the same people now that was saying at that time are expecting the sheriffs or the bailiffs at any time. And God help me, or God help this country in 2021, because I know after this there will be a clean sweep. They're even given the Gardaí powers now to do the evictions. So, you know, they're bringing it into their jurisdiction. And, you know, it's frightening to think of what's going on or what's going to happen. Like, we were supposed to, or we were a nation that grew up with respect for the elderly, and instead of doing any harm, to do whatever we could to help. And now it's gone the opposite way. Like, I can understand with the situation last night where David and neighbours, like, and I know some of their neighbours and very good, understanding people. But the thing is, they have elderly people in the house with them, and you know, it's an awful risk to ask someone. It's hard enough to ask even for to stay the night, but with the papers and with what has gone out, you know, where are they going to stay? When are they going to leave? There's an awful lot of stress on families now where they cannot visit each other, and like to expect to go taking in neighbours, people dying in hospital, their loved ones not allowed in to see them. You know, this is what's going on, and yet, you know, to think that story about the cats, that's, I can relate to that with David, because when all the hullabaloo was going on the last time, that's the same thing he says to me is, will you mind the cats? That's I hope they didn't kill me cats. You know, that's the type of a gentleman David is, and it's heart-wrenching to hear about him. And I know the night that was in it, I was up fairly late last night, and the rain and the wind, and I know that he wouldn't even feel it when he go out around the cats. He was at home, you know, and the fact of having to get into that car and go, and the police watching outside, like, I don't know. I just can't get it all together in my head where this evil is coming from.
And yes, just to pick up on one of your points there, you mentioned the newspapers. And what actually happens is that there is a press release prepared, and it's released to all of the media outlets. And then, you know, it's printed or broadcast in more or less that format. And it's carefully crafted. And it is crafted in such a way to give... you're looking there at the headline from the Times yesterday evening. The word agreement, that the family have agreed to leave their home. They didn't have a choice. The choice that was put to them in the court yesterday was to go to jail or leave their home. And that was, you know, that really wasn't a choice. I suppose those of us who know the McGanns are deeply, deeply upset, deeply shocked. That person that I spoke to this evening who had helped them to gather up some of their belongings. Now, they were completely distraught. They didn't know what to get, what to bring, bearing in mind that they had no idea. They had absolutely no idea that this was going to happen. I visited the McGanns when the restrictions were lifted. I was trying to remember when it was, August, September. And they were in good spirits. And they really, you know, I spoke to Geraldine, and she really believed that they were going to be able to mediate some kind of a settlement with the bank whereby they would allow them to remain on in the home. She really, really did believe that. And I just know that she would have had no idea yesterday when she was arrested that that she would have to leave in such a hurry. And they were given just so little time, like 9:30 to return to the house, to be out by 10. Now, I know the guards did extend that to 12:30, but still 3 hours to gather up your belongings. You wouldn't, and traumatised and disorientated from the journey back to back to their home in a paddy wagon, they wouldn't. Where would you even begin? You know, we did a programme on Wednesday night on Centre Ground where we looked at evictions and people losing their homes. And last night we had Margaret Hanrahan from County Tipperary, who's had a 10-year battle with the ACC Bank to hold on to her home. And maybe we'll look now at a clip from Wednesday night's programme, because it's scary, really. It was so prophetic what Margaret had to say on Wednesday night last.
Just tell you that we had a thatched house, and under the stewardship of the receiver, that was burnt down. We could never, nobody could ever found for the cause of that. And as a result of that, you'll see that house was burned down. As a result of that, then they came along and threw every single bale of hay I had in. Imagine throwing out bales of hay that you made in the summer and throwing them out in September to rot in the fields. And that was all that I couldn't feed the horses. I could do nothing. So it was all intimidation. And you're talking about the COVID thing. The one thing I'd be concerned, not so much people's health is one thing, but what about the people who have taken a break from the mortgages? They literally are facing the same thing what I faced in 2011. To break your mortgage contract is breaking your contract. So the receiver and the banks can come in now because you have broken your contract, even though the government is saying, oh, we'll look after you. I heard it being discussed in the morning that they're only waiting until January or February for receivers and whatever else is going into hotels and all of this. We are going to have the same tsunami again back come March. I can assure you we'll have the same tsunami. So people wake up. They might be getting free money now, but you will pay for it.
Well, Colin, you know, we're chatting to each other tonight. It's not scripted. And just, you know, when I look back on that video clip of Margaret, I feel that kind of this is the last chance saloon, that if we don't do something to speak up about what is happening. I know now that there has been a massive response to what the government did this week in sealing the mother and baby home records for 30 years and handing the files over to Tusla. And as I came online tonight, there's now almost 100,000 signatures on that uplift petition to Minister Gorman to repeal the seal. And it's repeal the seal is actually trending on Twitter. So there has been, if we could get that kind of a mobilisation of a response to what is happening at the moment, not just to the McGanns, but to what's coming down the tracks, we might be able to prevent what's happening.
Well, I think that they know exactly how to handle that, and that is the COVID regulations. We might get signatures, but the COVID regulations is the time. I think the evictions was only regarding to the tenants, or that's what I'm led to believe. People in rented accommodation, that they couldn't be thrown out. You know, there's always, you're led to believe one thing, but the actual truth is completely different. And the petition for the baby's home, that, like, I could have forecast this a year ago, because I'd have spoken to that lady that highlighted the two babies and that, and it was obvious they were so delayed, and so the length that it went on, and the inquiry and the searching for the information, it was obvious that the plan was in place, because it's too close to the bone for people with the child's DNA or the babies that they found the DNA. And now there's so much DNA on file in this country, is that there'd be a lot of people connected to the DNA that would be either shamed or embarrassed. And I'd have a feeling that a lot of them could have been visitors to Leinster House in their career. So that's why I
So-
think that that's covered.
Yeah, and we're kind of getting, Colin, and we're kind of getting a little sidetracked there. But what I'm saying is that it beholds all of us to do what we feel in our conscience that we can do to raise this issue of what has happened to the McGanns and raise the issue of the evictions. We might think that this is just an isolated case, but Margaret's solitary warning there that this is coming down the tracks, and it's as if the pieces of the jigsaw have all been put in place. As you've said, Colin, it would appear that the Gardaí are going to be given extra powers to carry out evictions. I'm not qualified to confirm that, but I do know that with the legislation that was passed on the 30th of July, that they now allow hearsay in the courts. So once upon a time, the original documentation had to be produced in these disputes with the banks, but on foot of this legislation that was passed, they can now use photocopies where original documentation is no longer available. So they have the pieces of the jigsaw in place. So maybe, Colin, we'll wind up now, and maybe just a final word, Colin, from yourself.
Yeah, well, I'd say about just to comment on what you're after saying there is that they can give all the hearsay evidence they want, but I guarantee you that there is no original wet ink copy in any case that you go looking for. So there's no proper evidence of anything. It's one thing to accept hearsay, but the documents, the original documents, has to be before the court. And in any repossession that has taken place so far, there has been, and there won't be, because they cannot. They're gone. So that's that. But I would like for everyone that's listening in and everything, thank them for their office of support. Getting back to everyone individually is going to be hard, but the time is coming very close, I think, where you will be needed, and all the resources we can gather will be needed, because this country has gone completely upside down. I believe it's heading for a disaster. The 100 years are up, and it won't be a famine this time. Well, the alleged famine, whatever you want to call it. It's this era of how they make you homeless and penniless. That's what's happening now. It's just a repeat. And if people wants to wait until the last minute, people doesn't realise what's going on until it comes to their own door. But I've spoken and met and been through for the last 7 or 8, 9 years with people in this kind of stress. And I tell you, no matter which way you go, that let you try and do a deal with the banks, let you go to court. An awful lot of people, out of the shame and the guilt of it, has handed in the keys and never went to court. Like, this is all happening. There's deals made with banks. Your neighbours down the road has deals made with banks where they're renting their own properties from the banks to save face. This is where it's going. And you think, or you mightn't even realise how bad it is now. But I guarantee you, mark my words, this time 21, there'll be an awful lot of people looking back and saying, we had the chance to do something that time and we didn't do it. I'm asking you, please search your conscience, your head, your humanity for your neighbour that you don't know, because of the shame and guilt that after bailing out the banks they have imposed on everyone. People are taking it to heart that it's them that has done wrong, and all our oil, gas, everything gone, and there is no sign of anything changing. And that's the first sign of insanity, is when you keep doing the same things and nothing changes. And look at, if people doesn't get up and get out now and make themselves heard, not asking to do this and that. If you look at the ways the situation, the government works for us, and when they're not doing their job, they shouldn't be there. It's as simple as that. You go into a factory, you go into an IT section, you go into anywhere, even the county council. If you don't do what you're employed to do there, you have to go. And that's common sense. There was an error, there was an oversight, there was this, that, and the other. That's not good enough for the salaries they are claiming and the expenses. We should have the best running system in the world, because our TDs and ministers and Taoiseachs and Taoiseachs and all them bucks are paid higher, the top of the world class salary, and we have the living of the lowest, a third world country. It's on the ground, it's everywhere I go, but no one is saying it, because everyone is too ashamed, because the proud Irish. But I tell you, get rid of the pride, because pride will bring an awful lot, and has already brought an awful lot of people to an early grave. So I say, look in your conscience, sit alone for 5 or 10 minutes and just think of the people that you know that has committed suicide, the people that's in hotel rooms with 5 children in a hotel room tonight, and think of them facing in for Christmas and that they cannot leave these places. We're not too bad out in the country, where we have a garden and we can walk down the road maybe a couple of miles before we come on another house. But you think of the parents that's in small rooms with people, with children with special needs, and they have to stick with them. Well, during the lockdown before, it was 24 hours a day. Now I think they're still allowed to go to school. But think of them people that cannot bring their children for a walk or do something or anything that's natural. Like, we are being dictated to here. We're being whipped into a situation where we depend on them to tell us everything to do. Now,
Okay, Colin.
Grown up that you need to be responsible for your own actions and don't harm or injure anyone. And that's the ways that it is. That when the country was in wealth, we didn't see much of it, and we definitely see nothing with this side of the Shannon.
Okay.
And
okay.
that's not rant over. So
no, it's not. I just want to pick up on the point that you made there, Colin, just to connect it, because what you're saying there is that when people are evicted out of their home, they have to be housed. We forget about that. So the state has to step in then and provide housing for these people. They can't be left on the street. And as you've said so eloquently there, Colin, families end up then, in single hotel rooms in terrible, atrocious conditions. I don't want to go out tonight on a totally negative note. As I said, Wednesday night's Irish inquiry examined the whole issue of people being evicted from their homes, and we had 3 amazing guests, and Margaret Hanrahan, Frank Roach from Cork, and Magella Rippington. And I came away from that programme really buoyed up, because while the full apparatus of the state was pegged at them, they managed to survive because their friends and neighbours rallied around them. And that is what brought them through. And they're now in a much better place, down the road. So, and that is to pick up on your point again, Colin. The only way that we're going to get through this is really watching out for each other, being kind to each other, being gentle with each other, being merciful with each other. And I ask you, please, those of you who are watching in, it's no point watching. You have to do something. And I suppose my call to action for you tonight is to share the video so that people will find out what is actually happening in this country. We have to get the word out there. And the more people that know, then the more people there will be, as Colin said, to put pressure on our TDs and our elected representatives, because after all, we are a democracy, and these people will be coming back to us maybe sooner rather than later, looking for our vote. And they will always swing and sway whatever way the wind is blowing. So we underestimate the power that we have. We have huge, massive power. We are a democracy, and these people that are in the Dáil, that are selling us out to the banks, have to face us. At election time, and we have that power. We have the power of our vote, and if we can muster up a really, really strong voice, speaking out against what is happening, it will bring them back into line. So please share, please get the word out. And I promise that as soon as I have any further updates on what is happening, I will bring them to you. For the moment, I will leave you with the image from last night at the McGann's home at 12:30. The family have their car with their few belongings packed into it, and David is out in the yard in the spills of rain, crying as he's saying goodbye to his cats. And the family drive off out the gate into an unknown destination. None of us have been able to make contact with them today, and that is the truth. We have not been able to make contact with them today. We have no idea where they are. And I suppose they have to be at a secret location, because obviously somebody has taken them in, and that person that took them in is actually breaching the COVID regulations, and that's the way it is. So, Banat de Orif Galer, thank you for watching. Please share. Iawa. And we leave you now with a clip from that morning of the eviction on the 11th of December 2018. And be warned, some of the language is quite strong.
Hey! Hey! Anybody stand there and watch this happen? Private property! You're on private property! I'm not on any private property. Hold! Hold! There! Do your job! He will be responsible. He will be responsible. Give me a hand. That's one of your own.
That's one of your fucking own. That's a disgrace. You should be fucking ashamed of yourselves.
No, you take it easy, man. Get off the property.
Excellent, yeah. Ring letter, Kenny.
How can you arrest me?
Ring letter,
How
Kenny.
can you arrest me? How can you arrest me? There's not a court order. There's not a court order. Hold! Paul! Don't fight them, Paul. They're in the wrong, they know they're in the wrong. They're all on Facebook at the moment.
Take that away. I won't take it away.
I
won't take it away. Take that away. I won't take it away. Don't lay your hand on me. I'm not touching you. Don't lay your fucking hand on me. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Yeah. You're a minute or something else. You should be fucking ashamed of yourself. Fellow Irishman, you should be. You're a fucking disgrace. You're English? British. British, oh yeah, British bastard.
You ran once before you
Yes, bastard, you'll be run again.